Thank you. I'd like to call this session of the Board of Revision to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Ojibwe, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 41st Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Harvey Diamond. I'm chairing today's session. With me today are Diane Knight and Kevin Stephenson. The City of Winnipeg, the Assessment Department is represented by Jonathan Spacek, and our administrator is Francisca Picato. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rules in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. And the statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony. And anyone speaking to such matters must first be sworn in. Be advised, the comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered as evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at the hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. And should you wish to appeal, information to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions and the applicant may have. And then the applicant's testimony followed by any questions. And each side will be given an opportunity to summarize if they wish to do so. Once all the evidence upon an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The person will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private to render its decisions. And you receive the board's decision by written mail as soon as possible. Please note that all information is formed a public hearing. It's live streamed and recorded. It will form part of a public record. And today we'll be hearing items 1 through 7 and item 9 on the docket. And Ms. Picoto, please affirm the assessor's and take his testimony when you can.
Yes. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Jonathan Spacek.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Marcelo Navarro.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Okay, well, we'll proceed then with item 1, and that is the property that is at 1151 Portage Avenue. Mr. Spacek, when you're ready, you can proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just will bring up early that the appellant and I have some agreements on about 5 of the properties. So this is one that I'm recommending a reduction. And again, we just kind of spoke with these, pretty recently. So I don't have necessarily workups sent into the board, but I can explain the value. And if you have any questions, please let me know. So we're starting with file number 24-2402. This is roll number 1309-607-1800, located at 1151 Portage Avenue. We have a 2025 assessment of $1,363,000, and I am recommending a reduction today to $1,299,000.
Okay, and Mr. Navarro, are you accepting that?
I am, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Spacek, if you just go over how you arrived at that reduction for the board.
Absolutely. So if you scroll down to page 6 on my brief, you can see we have a wide range of units in here, but really we're using the same square footage, 584,000. It's a blended, works out to a blended rate of 1311. And we're using all of the rest of the parameters the same. So we're using a 6% vacancy, 3% expenses, $8 shortfall, 6.7% cap, and that works out to $1,299,000.
Okay, so that's based on the reduction of the anticipated rent.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions, Diane?
No, sir.
Kevin, do you have any questions?
No questions at this time, thank you.
And I don't either, so thank you very much. And as Mr. Navarro has indicated his acceptance, unless, Mr. Navarro, if you have anything that you want to add, otherwise we can go on with the next item on the docket.
We can proceed.
Okay, we can. So we'll then go to item number 2 then. And
Thank
that-
you, Miss.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry, I was just,
Go ahead, Mr. Bashek. I didn't mean to cut you off.
no problem. I was just gonna say thanks, and I was gonna start the presentation if that works.
That's for 1793 Portage Avenue, and it does work. Thank you.
Perfect. Same thing, another recommendation. I'm at file number 24-25 or 2057. This is roll number 0702177800. This is 1793 Portage. And we have a 2025 assessed value at 496,000. I am recommending a reduction to 371,000. This is, if you turn to my page number 7, you will see the original workup for this property. At the end of the day, I'm removing the substandard basement space and slightly adjusting the rent for that main floor from $13.91 to $12.75, and that is again following all the rest of the standard parameters for 2025 OFSs. We're at 371,000.
Okay. And Mr. Navarro, you're accepting that, I assume?
Yes, I'm accepting that.
Okay. Ms. Knight, any questions?
No, sir.
Mr. Stephenson, do you have any questions?
No questions at this time, thank you.
Okay, and I don't either, and I'm assuming, Mr. Navarro, you have nothing that you want to add at this point.
No, nothing else.
Thank you very much then. Okay, we can then proceed with item number 3 on the agenda. And that's the property at 1871 Portage Avenue.
Yes, I believe this is one we don't have an agreement on, so let me just load this up. 1871 is right here. Thank you for your patience. So there we go. So we're asking confirmation. This is file number 24-2261. We have roll number 070202251100, 1871 Portage Avenue, with a 2025 value of 1,234,000. You can see where this is located on page 2. We are just east of Portage and Ferry on the north side of Portage. We have a building that was originally built in 1972 with a gross floor area of 7,047 square feet and a leasable area of 7,000 square feet. You can see pictures on page 3 of the street view. You can see the parking at the back and the entrances to the units at the front. I've included the subject property leases on page 4, so you can see 2 leases in place. Unit 1 has advantage conditioning, 3,295 square feet, and their actual rent is 3,569. Plus, you can see the recoveries on the right-hand side that they are paying. Unit 2, Turning Leaf, 3,705 square feet. Lease started in 2017, 3,705 square feet, and they are paying $4,065 a month for that square footage. And you can see the recoveries on the right-hand side. That is a 10-year lease. I've included a few comparables, or 5 comparables on page 5 to try to show us, some OFS rents. Main floor, we have 2181 Portage is comparable number 1, building built in 1953. There's a 5-year lease signed in 2022, 1,800 square feet at $13.64. I've included comparable number 2 on Henderson Highway, built in 1979, 3,000 square feet at $13.36 a square foot. I've included 2 from Waverly to give you an idea of that area. 1989 newer build compared to our subject, but again, 1,700 square feet and 2,000 square feet at $13 and $14.95 respectively. And I've included Unit B at 440 Dawn, 1956 built OFS, 2020 signed lease for 5 years, 2,200 square feet at $13.57. You can see the workup of our property on page 6, the 2 units, 7,000 square feet. Following our OFS parameters for this cycle, we have 6% vacancy, 3% expenses, $8 shortfall, and a 6.05 capitalization rate. Again, all model driven based on age, size, location. And that's how we get that total value of $1,234,000. I have included the mailer. It just, again, it's on page 11. It's just what they've sent in for income statement, showing their property revenue, recoveries, some of their recoverable expenses, utilities, and then their what they, their net earnings at the bottom of 89,000. And then I've also included the rent roll that I went over before. So if you have any questions, let me know. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sviacek. Yes, Mr. Navarro, if you have any questions, you can put them forward.
Yes, I do. I do have a couple of questions, Jonathan. So there is very little disagreement on net operating income. We're actually quite close. So this all boils down to cap rate. In terms of the cap rates that you've included in your chart here, what would you classify this as, a suburban A or a suburban B?
Good question. I would say a suburban B.
And we have no suburban C category, but if there was, would you maybe lump it into that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It really, the classification versus suburban A and B differs per party, but again, I always just call them OFSs and look at their age and location and
Right.
size, amenities, all that. But yeah, again, tough to give it a classification.
Okay. Now, we noticed that your cap rates are consistent for both categories of suburban A or suburban B. There's no sales included, obviously. But can you confirm whether this was just model driven cap rate or whether you adjusted it in any way?
Yeah, from my understanding, it was just a baseline generated model cap rate. No adjustments were made.
No further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Stephenson, do you have any questions?
No questions at this time, thank you.
Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
So the two properties, they're a little bit different in square foot, rent per square foot?
The 2 units?
Yes.
Like model generated, yes.
Right.
And from what they pay, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, Mr. Bishop, this comes out the cap rate. So I'm looking at the cap rate tables, and I note that suburban A and B and both have the same 525 as Mr. Navarro pointed out. And that would be at the 20 percentile level, and at the 80 percentile level would go up to 6.75. So obviously, if the model is 6.05, it would be somewhere in between those. Do you have any idea what percent of this building would come out at? I guess you could do the calculation and make that determination if it's all model driven.
Yeah, if I understand your question correctly, like we are on the lower end of what we have for between our 20th and 80th percentile for all OFSs, because we don't really differentiate. We don't have a suburban A and suburban B classification. We just have OFS. So that's 4 stories and under. Office space, some are downtown, some are out. Again, majority of them suburban, but in our case, we're on the lower end again due to size. Most often, age is part of it, and it's when, or no, sorry, I'm at the wrong. Sorry, what is my cap on this one? I'm looking at my last page. It's 6.05. So yeah,
You're in the middle.
we're in between on this one. So, and then that's just determined purely based on its size, location, age, those kind of factors are what's putting it there. And again, there's, we're not making a difference between A, B, C, D, classifying the suburban. We're just looking at, using those characteristics of the property, generating a cap based on other sales. And, again, this one falls in between that 20th and 80th percentile, pretty standard OFS in our opinion.
Okay, thank you very much. You've answered that question. And Mr. Navarro, then you can present your evidence.
Thank you. This is 1871 Portage Avenue. If you would like to turn to page 6, we can have a look at a color photo of the property and its general location. This is just slightly east of Ferry Road. And if we can turn to page 12, we can see the methodology that we use. So for this particular property, I think it comes as no surprise that we're using the income approach. So we are trying to calculate a potential market rent for this property. That's the first task. And we've calculated a potential market rent of $87,500 using an applied rental rate of $12.50 per square foot for the two areas, giving us, again, a potential rent of $87,500. Now, that rent is derived from the comparables that we looked at. Those are listed in the chart above the rental rate chart, highlighted in blue up top. In terms of the vacancy allowance, we've applied a 6% vacancy allowance. This is standard. This is a single occupant property. It's fully occupied, so we don't need to apply anything more than the market vacancy rate for this, and we've accepted the 6%. In terms of the shortfall, we are applying the same shortfall. In terms of non-recovered expenses, we are using a 3% non-recovered expense allowance, the same as the assessor. And in terms of the class, the suburban class capitalization rate, our rates range between 6.75 and 9.50. And obviously, 6.5 is at the lower end of the marketplace, and 9.5 would be something not at the best end of the market. The city has applied a 6.05 capitalization rate. We've applied a 7% capitalization rate. I'll go into the capitalization rate study after this one, and I'll ask the chair to actually apply that capitalization rate study to all of the properties that we'll hear after this one.
Okay.
In terms of the valuation workup, you can see that on page 14. Again, there's not much of a difference between our net operating income. Really, what it comes down to is the capitalization rate that we've applied to this property. And we come out with a total value of $1,091,750 or $1,092,000 rounded. And in the appendix, you can see the comparables that we've used. And those are just, again, pictures of the comparables. So I will move next to the capitalization rate study, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair.
That is fine. Let's all access it then, just a minute.
Do we have it?
Yeah, it was in part of the agenda. I mean, part of the, yeah. It's
What number is it?
8, if you look at it.
I don't have number 8.
There's number 3. The third thing, there's docket agenda.
2025 cap rate final?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Navarro, we've all downloaded it now onto our screens, and you can proceed when you're ready.
Okay, so this is the general capitalization rate study that will be supplied by Altus Group for most office properties. So I don't know if you've already had an opportunity to hear this once. So if not, I will be going through it. I'll summarize most of the sessions so I don't go into this study word for word and take up the next hour.
Okay, that'd be nice. I got to tell you that I haven't seen this yet, Mr. Navarro. So
okay, yeah,
okay.
It'll be a more thorough summary. Okay, starting on page 2, we can look at the capitalization rate. Now, this section is simply a section on calculating the capitalization rate, what it is. You can go through it at your own convenience, but it's not really the crux of the argument. It's really talking about methodology and then how capitalization rates are calculated. There are some references to the Manitoba Court of Appeal. And again, you can go over that at your convenience. What I will ask you to do is turn to page 6. That is essentially where the meat and bones of this study really start. And on page 6, we start talking about interest rates, inflation, and capitalization rates, and the relationship between all these things. So interest rates, as interest rates increase, sorry, lost my train of thought here. interest rate increases effect on decreasing the money supply. So that is an important fact that's in there, is that right off the bat, any increases in inflation decrease the money supply. And again, the tool that the government or the central bank uses to control inflation is the interest rate. Real estate debt and equity funds are used to create investments when supply of money is low. As noted, interest rates rise. The higher the inflation rate, or the higher the interest rate, cap rates and discount rates are affected as well. On page 7, we can see that commercial mortgage rates began to rise as the interest rates began to rise in 2022. The benchmark rate rose on 425 points between April 1, 2021 and April 2023. On page 9, you can see that office cap rates, and this is really just a summary of that, office cap rates began to rise. As you can see in the chart, starting in Q1 2022 and Q2 2022, somewhere in between the two, we don't note. I don't note either or, just that they happen sometime in between that. And also that hybrid work is still having an effect by curtailing office demand. But those are the important points to take from these first few pages up to page 9. Now, beyond that, the downtown office market has been in decline since 2018. You can see that in Winnipeg's office market, starting on page 10. And though capital improvements have increased since 2022 and 2023 in the downtown, in order to stave off vacancy due to supply-demand issues and hybrid work, values are not increasing. Rather, the work is intended to mitigate declining values. So that is basically saying that the office market investors are investing in capital, in improvements, in order to keep tenants there, or with the hope of attracting new tenants. But again, this is still, there's still the issue of the hybrid workplace, and that is still having a significant effect on the office market. And that is why the office market has declined for the most part so much across the country. So on page 11, you can see the brokerage reports. Now, the brokers analyze these cap rates depending on their specific portfolios, the properties that they sell, which tend to be higher end properties. So you can see that from the brokers report, I'm just summarizing the downtown A's, but what the brokers are saying is that there's been about a 50 to 150 basis point increase for the downtown A. I'm not looking at downtown AA, just downtown A. Downtown B is increasing between 25 and 125 basis points. Suburban A is increasing by 25 basis points, and suburban B, again, 25 basis point increase. Now, basically amongst the 4 categories, you're only seeing increases in the capitalization rates. You're not really seeing any decreases. Next, we can turn to the office cap rates that Altus has used. So we have a few more categories because there are a few more categories that we look at. So the standard A-B categories that the brokerage reports reflect on the nature of their portfolios. So they tend to be the better portfolios, whereas we tend to look at not only the A's and B's, but also the categories C and D, which there are a lot of properties in Winnipeg that are classified in these 2 categories. So in terms of the office A downtown, we are using only 1 cap rate, 6.75%. Office B in the downtown, we're ranging it between 725 and 775. Office C between 775 and 825, and Office D between 850 and 950. And then again, suburban A, 625 to 675, and suburban B, 675 to 9.5. Now, suburban B obviously You can probably recall that I asked Mr. Spacek that there is no suburban C category. If there was, that's probably where some of these higher end cap rates would land if there was another category known as suburban C, but unfortunately there is none. Starting on page 13, you can see some of the sales that we looked at. So we looked at Carlton Street. This is 155 Carlton Street. This was a cap rate calculated at 7.48%. Index 2, again, Carlton Street. This is 185 Carlton Street. This is 8.70. And Index 3, this is 433 Main Street. This would be, I think many of you know this as the passport office. 8.18%. Now the next two are in suburban areas. So you can see 290 Burnell, that is 6.96, and 383 Dover Court, that is 7.56. And lastly, on page 18, you can see 365 Osborne, and that is 6.02. Now, apart from the cap rates that I noted in Altus Group, there are several site-specific factors that we look at, and you can see those on page 20. And the factors are generally pretty consistent: location, any external factors, site size, and whether there's any development potential or excess land, the building size itself, the building condition, and the age life of it. So you'll see that some of our properties that we will have in some of the other properties on this docket have different effective ages than their original build dates. The configuration and the building layout, the strength of the covenant. This is probably one of the most important factors. So, for example, a lease term of say 1 to 2 years, not a strong covenant. Anything above 10 years would be, in my opinion, considered a strong covenant. Income forecast and regulatory factors. So regulatory factors would be something like heritage status. You'll note that we have 2 properties that are in that specific category where we are arguing that heritage factor is an issue. That's it for the capitalization rate study. I'm open for questions.
Hey, Mr. Spacek, you can ask questions on both the presentation and the cap rate study.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Mr. Stevenson, do you have any questions?
So you're saying that interest rates are what drove the cap rates to increase?
I would say that they have a relationship, but also the capitalization rates have been affected by the decreased demand for space also.
Yeah, like the vacancies caused by COVID.
I think it went beyond COVID. At least at this point, we can still say that it's a trend. Certainly, the federal government is having a battle with unions about that. I don't know how that's going to go, but yes, it's still having an effect on the office market.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Navarro, the model that the assessment department uses determined a cap rate of 6.05, which is right in the middle of their cap rates. And has that gone up since the previous term when we last were here for the 2021 assessment period?
I did, to be honest, Mr. Chair, I didn't look at the previous assessment. I'm
talking about the category, the tables that were used by the assessment department in the previous determination based on April of 2021. Were the cap rates lower then than they are now, or is this chart the same as?
Yeah, I don't know if Jonathan would have that at hand. I didn't look into that.
Yeah, okay.
Um,
Probably a question I should have asked Jonathan, and but anyway, yeah.
I note, Mr. Chair, that we do actually the comparison between the two cycles when we look at the brokerage reports and our own, but not the cities. We didn't look at the cities.
Okay, and would vacancies be as large a factor in the suburbs or in the area where this subject property is as it would be downtown?
So I can't say that with complete how should I word it? I'm not 100% sure, but I think the trend of working from home and that's been consistent throughout, not
Okay.
just downtown.
Okay, so you think that the vacancies also increased in the outside of downtown area to
I would say that they would have increased everywhere, yes.
the same percentage as they would have downtown?
No, I think the downtown has definitely been hit harder.
Okay, and in this subject property, and I know that's just a question. I know it doesn't really come down to anything a lot, but it's still interesting. Do you know if there's ever been any vacancies in the subject property?
Well, not that I'm aware of, and I only look back a few years. It doesn't look like there's been any vacancy at this location, but I mean, we're not looking at the leasehold interest, as you know, we're looking at the market.
Absolutely. I'm not suggesting that you're not entitled to a vacancy factor.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
saying
it's
that for a second, even though there's no vacancies, there potentially could be in the future. And I'm aware of the fact that if that was the case, a purchaser would have to look at the fact that there might be some vacancies.
exactly.
So I want you to know that. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think that completes my questions. Then. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll apply your cap rate study in each other item if you want us to. Just refer to it that you'd like us to again take that into account in any other of the matters before us today, Mr. Navarro.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we can now proceed then with item number 4 in the docket, which is the property at 1901 Portage Avenue. And Mr. Smachek, when you're ready, you can proceed.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, we're just loading this one up. 1901 Portage Avenue, we're file number 24-1426. We have roll number 07041064-200, address 1901 Portage Avenue. The 2025 assessed value is 636,000. I am asking to confirm the assessed value, and again, I had spoken to Mr. Navarro ahead of time on this one, so I would like to see if he would be comfortable speaking to it.
Hey, Mr. Navarro, if you'd like to speak to it at this time.
Yes, I went over this property in detail with Mr. Spacek, and we looked at the sale on the property and 610,000 in 2019. We also looked at the income of the property. We looked at vacancy and those other factors and came to the conclusion that we are comfortable with the value of this property, so we will recommend that it be confirmed.
Okay, so I'm going to indicate then it's confirmed at the request of the applicant.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to just ask if there's any questions from my other panel members. I don't have any, but Mr. Stephenson or Ms. Knight, if you have a question, you could ask it now.
I do not. Thank you.
No
Okay.
questions, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So that takes us to item number 5 then, which is the property at 1907 Portage Avenue. And Mr. Spacek, when you're ready, you can proceed with that property.
Thank you very much. 1907. Okay. we are looking at file number 24-2047. This is roll number 0704106600. Again, 1907 Portage Avenue, 2025 assessed value of 1,334,000. We were able to speak to this one ahead of time and came to a resolution. It is originally 1,334,000. We have a revised 2025 assessment of 1,287,000. So at the end of the day, what changed, if you look at my page number 6, you will see we have a main floor rent of 1823. What I did for a resolution is adjust that to $17 a square foot. And I actually left everything else the same, and it follows all the standard parameters for our 2025, and that's how we get to the total value of 1,287,000.
Okay, and Mr. Rivero, you're accepting that lower value?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Any questions, Ms. Knight?
No, sir.
Thank you.
No
And-
questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stephenson. And I don't have any questions either, so we can proceed then with the next property, which is the property at 2035 Portage Avenue. And when you're ready, Mr. Spacek?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so 2035 Portage, this is file number 24-2182. We have roll number 0705162900. We have a 2025 assessed value of 427,000. This one, again, I have a recommended reduction to 375,000. If you turn to my page 3, you can see this property sold February 2nd, 2023 for $375,000. Again, when reviewed, it looked arm's length. It is close to the reference date and made sense for me for market value. And if we have the way I got to that value is actually by adjusting the rental rate on my page number 5, the rental rate for 1,613 square feet was $1,505. I've adjusted it to $13.90 and upped the capitalization rate a quarter point to 5.25, and that gives you 375,000.
Okay. Mr. Navarro, you're accepting that revised figure of 375,000?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Any questions, Ms. Knight?
No, sir.
Mr. Stephenson?
No questions.
And I don't either, so thank you. And then that takes us then to the property at 1871 Portage Avenue. Is that right?
No, I
221.
believe we're at 221.
Backwards, sorry,
yeah. No problem.
my script, okay, yeah. 2021 Portage Avenue.
Perfect. The next two, we will hear the property, so I will go over this one. We're at
Yeah.
file number 24-2645. This is roll number 1305216600. Address is 221 Portage Avenue. This has a split class on it, but for 2025, we had 105,000 as exempt, 40 classification, and then we had 4,740,000 as a taxable. We have a 1915 built 2-story classified as an OFD. So this is our older downtown office classification. So, you'll find a ton of these buildings in the exchange and located throughout downtown. Again, when it's originally built in 1915 and it has an effective year as 1925. Again, that's one of the main reasons to get that classification. So I tried to look at similar properties that were also, built a long time ago. And this building, as you'll notice on my page 2, it actually it's on Portage Avenue on the north side. It fronts Gary Street as well as the corner in Notre Dame. It has a bunch of units in it, 2 stories. If we turn to my page, again, we have a few pages of pictures just to give you a good idea of the property. And if we turn to page 7 and 8, page 7 is a list of comparables. Page 8 is the workup. 8 and 9 are the actual workups of the property. But on page 7, just quickly, I've again picked a range of OFDs downtown, so some old office downtowns. You can see, mostly in the Exchange. We have a 191 Lombard. We have 1,800 square feet at $16 a square foot. We have 123 Bannatyne, unit 400. This is 4,376 square feet at $14. We also have 456 Main Street, again, unit 202. This was built in 1905. There's a 5-year lease signed in 2017, and it was 4,345 square feet at $14. Again, I've also used 123 Bannatyne comparables, 5 through 9, 167 Lombard, 460 Main, unit 402 is comparable 10, and another one at 123 Bannatyne. So again, tried to find a range of older buildings downtown with similar sized units, and you can see that the rental range that I found comparable is from 1082 on the low end, all the way up to $16. So you will notice there's a wide range of rents for buildings of this type downtown. If we turn to page 8, you'll see how our model creates the 2025 assessed value. So we have a numerous amount of premises. 2 of them are labeled as restaurants. So the first premise is 1,954 square feet at $15.24. And then if you look down a bit, the standard restaurant C4 is another premise. 2 of the units have been used for 2 of the units have been used for restaurant purposes, but the remainder is our standard office classification, C2. And you'll see, again, a wide range of units in this building, as low as 380 square feet for one at $13.85. And then some of the larger units are in the 5,000 square foot range. And, their rents drop down to $10.79 and $10.64. So again, wide rate of rents. And I thought I wrote this down, but the blended rate, if you just bear with me, for the whole property works out to $11.58 a square foot. And when we move down to vacancy for our OFD properties for the 2025 cycle, you're looking at a vacancy loss of 14%. So again, it is tough to keep these older buildings full. And throughout history, we have seen that some of the larger, older buildings downtown do struggle with vacancy. So that's why you'll notice we're at 14% to, try to account for those up and downs in vacancy that a lot of these properties can experience over the years. We have a 3% expense percentage for 2025. We use $8 shortfall for that 14% vacancy loss. So $8 a square feet to account for that vacancy, the expenses of the vacant space when it is vacant. And we have an overall capitalization rate of 7.55%. So for the taxable portion, you get $4,740,000. And if you turn to page 9, you'll see that there is a 827 square foot unit at $12.85. This is the exempt portion of the property, but again, same parameters, and it works out to $105,000 for that unit. When you combine those values, you get the total 2025 value of $4,845,000. Again, they have complied with our request for information. And if you would like to closer, you can see page 13. They've included a mailer. You scroll down, I've included the online mailer that was sent in. Just scrolling through it. Again, you can see on page 20, they've also included some information on some vacancies. So again, they had 2 units with 604 days vacant. Total vacant space is 6,627 square feet, which works out to 15.36% vacancy as of approximate the year before the reference date. And again, that's all the pertinent information. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, any questions?
Yes, I do. In terms of your capitalization rate on this property, the model has suggested a capitalization rate of 7.55. And that is actually higher than both the downtown A and downtown B. Now, the question that I really want to ask is that this is above both of those rates, and clearly this is reflecting another category or class of building, correct?
Yeah, it's our OFD classification, the old office downtown.
Okay, and you don't have the capitalization rates of the OFD buildings on here, correct?
Yeah, I don't think there's much of a range for the OFDs, but again, that's just I can't be certain for that. I haven't had any other OFDs yet, so I can't confirm, but I think it's usually a tighter range for we don't classify the range is the answer.
Okay, and you will note that you did mention that these types of buildings, these older ones, have a bit of a struggle maintaining proper or at least maintaining full occupancy, correct?
Yeah, they tend to have a lot of smaller units and there is a lot of options for that. So it's at least I've noticed over the years that they do tend to have a wave of, vacancies come and goes, and it's one of the main reasons you'll see this classification at 14% as opposed to something that we just looked at, like the OFS is at 6%.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stephenson, do you have any questions?
No questions at this time, thank you.
Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, I guess looking at this, I think Mr. Navarro already asked the question, so I won't ask him again. I'll let Mr. Navarro put forth what he has to say on this matter. So thank you very much, Mr. Stachek, for your presentation on this.
No problem.
And Mr. Navarro, you can proceed.
Thank you. This is 221 Portage Avenue, and this is file number 242645. On page 2, you can find the assessment summary. So that is, again, all of the specifics of the property, the roll number, the sizes, and the assessments for this cycle. I'll ask you to turn to page 5, and there we can see a picture of the property. I think we're all familiar with this property. It is a heritage property. You can see that on page 6. It was listed in 1998 as a category 2. So the category 2 objectives are to preserve the entire exterior of the building, erection, or structure, and such of its interior elements as specified in the listing, and to assure that all repairs thereof are appropriate to their special character or historical interest, to prevent or regulate demolition, removal, alteration, or repair of remainder of such interior in the manner described in subsection 5C. So in terms of what is available for owners of heritage properties, traditionally there's been a few funds. You can see those on page 7. Those are the Heritage and Economic Development Incentive Program, the Guild Pardon Hammerquist Fund, the Heritage Conservation Grant, and the City of Winnipeg Heritage Conservation Tax Credit Program. As we go on further into this property, you will also see that most heritage properties have some type of issue in terms of keeping up the repair. And that really is reflective of the age of the properties. Regardless of what effective age the city has put on them, these are old buildings. Their substructures are, in some cases, this one itself is more than 110 years old. So on page 11, we can see how we value this property. And again, as the assessor, we've chosen the income approach. So we've gone through the rent roll in this case. And the rent roll to us is making sense. There's not much requirement to actually update any of the rents in terms of them being too low. In some cases, we would have to adjust the rents upward, even if they are in place, simply because they haven't been updated for a long time. But in this case, we didn't feel a need to update any of the rents in this case. So what we have here is a building that is generating a potential market rent of $491,550 for the 42,319 square feet that are there. that works out roughly to $11.62. And as you noted in the assessor's brief, we are very close in this case. So what the model is saying in terms of the rent and what we're saying in terms of the rent is it's quite close. In terms of the vacancy, you can see the vacancy on page 13. So we've elected a vacancy of 16%. This is to account for the high vacancy at this location. You can see in the assessor's brief that they're also using a high percentage of vacancy, I believe. If I'm not mistaken, it might have been 14%. Yeah, 14%. So we are using a slightly higher vacancy. So in order to justify our position on this, we also noted the vacancy over the years. So going from 2022 to 2018, this over the past, I would say 4 years, starting in 2022, this building has had high vacancy. I think at this point you would call it chronic. I'm not exactly sure at what point you would call it chronic. I've used the figure, I've tossed the figure out of 15%. At some points that starts to become chronic. But I would say that this building likely has chronic vacancy at this point. So we've elected a vacancy rate of 16%. Shortfall, we haven't adjusted anything. Non-recovered expenses, as noted before, we're using 3%, and we haven't deviated from that. In terms of the capitalization rate, although this says 825 there, we have actually chosen a cap rate of 850 for this location. So on page 15, you can see the workup summary. You can see that we've chosen a capitalization rate of 850. And in terms of the net operating income, and this is for both income streams, we have a net operating income of $351,285. Cap rate of 850, that gives us an income value of $4,132,760 or $4,133 rounded. Beyond that, you can see the pictures. The basement itself is, I don't know what you would describe it as. I don't think it's usable as rentable area. It might be used as storage areas, but the heights are low. And you can see by its appearance, I mean, it resembles a dungeon more than a basement. And the second floor, you can see it there, and first floor interior. In terms of the heritage property, this is a long section of a study on heritage properties in Winnipeg. Basically, the way that I'll summarize this is that there are risks associated with these properties. First of all, the most important risk that we see is that, well, you can't really modify the buildings in any way unless the Heritage Authority actually approves that. So you are restricted in terms of what you can do with the buildings, but also in terms of how you can repair the buildings. So there are only a couple of outfitters that or companies that work on heritage properties in Winnipeg. So you are limited in terms of who you can use. In terms of the costs of repairing some of these structures, because you're more likely to need artisans as much as regular repair people. There are associated costs with that, and also because these buildings are so old, they deteriorate faster than most other buildings. So a newer building built with new materials, new substructures, superstructures, will deteriorate a lot less quicker than these types of buildings. Again, these buildings were designed and built in a different era. And in terms of the investment risk, well, there are several investment risks. There are those associated with the maintenance and repair of the properties. There are those risks that are associated with the general office environment in Winnipeg. And there are those risks involved with the general market and interest rates today. All of those three things kind of add up to a negative picture for this type of property. One of the things that's mentioned in this study, and I hope you've had an opportunity to read it, is that often, people are left with the opinion that you're stuck with these properties if the heritage designation comes on them, because there's not much else you can do with them. You're restricted as to what you can do with your own property. So that in itself is a large risk, and it's something that we recognize in the capitalization rate. And for most heritage properties that we look at, we start at 8% and move upwards. So you note that we gave it an 8.5%, and that is reflective of the type of property that we're looking at. So I'm open for questions now. Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I'll also ask that the cap rate study that we used in the previous example be applied to this property as well.
And that's fine, and thank you for pointing that out. I assumed that it would be, but not that it's that valuable, because you don't have heritage buildings there, but for what it's worth, thank you. Mr. Spitchik, any questions?
I have no questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stephenson, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Navarro, thank you for your presentation. I think I found it valuable. I don't think I have any questions to ask you. I think you made it very clear, and
Thank you.
So thank you for being able to assist us in trying to make a determination on this. I think it went a long way to help us. So thank you for that. And we'll now proceed with the next one, and that will be item number 9, which is the property at 276 Portage Avenue. And when you're ready, Mr. Spitchik, you can proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We're looking at file number 24-4413. We have roll number 1209-3224100. And so we have a 2025 value, you'll see on my first page, as 4,704,000. This is totally taxable school exempt, so it's a classification 40 with the liability of S for school exempt. We have a 1910 built OFC, is my memory correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have this as an OFC, so again, a little better than an OFB, but sorry, a little bit better than an OFD, but not as high on our classification list as an OFB. We have 47,562 square feet over all 3 stories of this building. We have, over 4 stories of this building, and we have a leasable area of 33,500. So there's a bit of history or some recent changes to this building. It had sold in October 20th, 2021 for $3 million. There were some renovations and changes made after that with the occupier of the building and owner of the building, and it's now I believe a hair studio, so a Vita institution. So I believe the majority of the building is used for that, and I think that is the main reason why it has been changed to the school classification or the no school tax classification. So again, I'm sure the appellant will be clarifying all that in his presentation, but that is what's happened from my understanding. I've included, if you turn to page, so I guess I could say where this is. If you look at page 2, you can see on Portage Avenue, we're almost across the street from our last property, but we're right on the corner of Smith and Portage, but we're on the south side this time. You can see the street view at the bottom of page 2 to get a better idea of how the building looks. Again, if my memory serves correctly, it used to be like the land titles building, or there was a provincial organization in there before, and then again the property is sold and changed uses. So we're on page 6 now. I've put some OFC comparables together. So again, you'll see that this building originally built in 1910, but with the renovations and changes over the year, we have an effective year of 1981. So again, not as old as some of these OFDs, at least for the interior and exterior of the property, but it's now broken down. I've put together some OFC comparables. You'll see I have 8 comparables ranging downtown and the exchange, ranging in effective years built or actual years built. But first one is 136 Market Ave, Unit 7, so our Suite 700. So on the 7th floor, they have a 14-year lease signed, 30,000 square feet. So again, trying to find some of the larger spaces because this building totally is 33,500. So we have a 30,000 square foot unit in 136 Market, and that is $11.75 a square foot. We have 55 Donald, unit 100. That's 17,987 square feet at $15.11 a square foot. We have 2 units in 1200 Portage. These are 13,000 and 12,000 square foot respectively, and they have $14 and $10.50 a square foot on those units. We have another unit in 136 Market, 401. This is 10,000 square feet at $12.50. And as we go down my comparable list, the unit sizes do get smaller. You have 1200 Portage, unit 302. This is a 7-year lease, 7,340 square feet at $11 a square foot. 305 Broadway, so that's unit 300 or the 3rd floor. We have 5,274 square feet at $13.20. And then finally 960 Portage, unit the 200 is 3,550 square feet at $16 a square foot. So you'll notice my range. Again, there is a range to these properties based on, different sizes, locations, ages, but they do have a range that I've shown today of $10.50 on the low end up to $16 a square foot. If we turn to page 7, you'll see our workup of this property. So again, we have we have it separated by units, but there is 24,650 square feet. The main portion of this building at $12.54 a square foot. We have a smaller 350 square foot unit. Again, due to the small size, economies of scale, the model boosts that rent up to $18.88 a square foot. We have 5,000 square feet at $14.62 and 3,500 square feet at $15.13. And if you let me punch in the calculation quickly, the blended rate for this full building is $13.19 approximately. So for all that 33,500 square feet. And you'll see that our OFC vacancy loss this cycle is 13%. So a little less, 1% less than the OFD classification, but OFCs we're giving a 13% vacancy. The model has 3% expenses for 2025 and then a $10 per square foot shortfall and an overall capitalization rate of 7%. So again, that's how we get to that total value of $4,704,000. Again, we have included, or I've included the mailer from 2022, and you can see it's originally it was the Terranet Manitoba, which I believe was land titles, but again, the old tenant before the building had sold. You can see on page 13, so they've included 33,502 square feet. But it says number of days vacant during 2015. So, but it also says at the top average percent of space vacant 2020. Building was empty. I'm guessing the 10-11, 96.72%. But again, I've also included on page 15. I just included to follow up with my story on the changes there. Just a permit that was taken out in 2022. Again, Avida occupancy for a new tenant in an existing multi-story single tenant building, interior alterations to include demolition of walls, removal of doors, construction of walls, installation of doors for a new tenant fit up, tenant to occupy all 4 floors, modifications on the 1st and 2nd floor to establish a hair salon. So again, this permit itself was taken out with a declared construction value of $800,000. And that is my presentation. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Navarro, any questions?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Um, in terms of the effective age the effective age of the property, the actual year built is 1910. The effective year built is 1981. Do you know how that figure came to 1981?
I don't know how that exact year was determined by whoever made the changes to this property over the years, but
That calculation is
there
not
are
included?
different calculations. I don't know which I don't know exactly how 1981 was chosen for this to update the effective years based on the renovations and changes on the building over the years.
Okay, and not only that, but this property is a heritage property. You're aware of that, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So, can you explain how this heritage property went from effectively being an OFD to an OFC? Because it is still a heritage property.
Yeah, absolutely. You can look on the bottom of my page to the street view, so you get an idea of, even though it's a heritage building, it has been again kept up well. They've done what they can with the exterior to keep it, without making any modifications, because you're obviously not allowed to make any major changes to the exterior. Again, and whoever went through this and updated it, has completed an inspection, has done their work to see what has been changed in the mechanical and what they can change on the inside to bring it up to date. And again, those changes all combined will be the main reasons to change the effective year from an older building comparatively to, like, let's say the last one we looked at, where you look at the pictures of the inside and you can tell it's much older. So, while I may not know the exact calculation used to get to the 1981, that's what's being used to effectively change it from an OFD to an OFC, to show the higher quality of the building, the changes that have been made, that are allowed to be made.
Okay. Now, the next question is regarding the premise IDs that you have on page 7. Now, you have 4 premise IDs, I assume. Actually, I don't assume. I noticed that you have 4 premise IDs, but this is demised for 1 occupancy, correct?
Correct,
And it
I
was
believe.
previously 1 occupancy as well.
Yeah, correct.
So I note that the model is shifting the rents depending on the premise IDs here, but wouldn't it have been more appropriate to actually have just 1 area here, seeing that it is 1 tenant and it has traditionally been 1 tenant?
Yeah, I believe, and again, I didn't make these changes, but I believe it has to do with the first and second floor being, like, if you go in there, it's actually like built like a hair salon for the schooling, and it is different than some of the other space that is more, from my understanding, like office space or for different uses. So I can't say for certain because I haven't been in this building since the changes, but I do believe they were made with the goal to make it as accurate as possible for the space. But again, I don't think looking at it all with a blended rate is the worst. We could have it all at 33,500 square feet at the blended rate that I said of, what was it, 13 something a square foot for the whole building.
Right.
Whether we look at it split up like this or that blended rate, I don't know if there'd be a huge difference.
Okay. In terms of your capitalization rate, the model has selected a capitalization rate of 7%, and that, according to the chart that you have on page 9, would be at the top end. Actually, this isn't the scale here. This is really the percentiles, but it would be the 80th percentile, 7%, right?
For which one, like suburban A or B, or?
No, it would be for downtown B.
Yeah, it would. Well, yeah, downtown Bs are all at 7% this cycle. We have this as an OFC. It just coincides with the OFB cap rate being used. But yeah, it matches the OFB, if that's the question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Stephenson? Hello, can you hear me?
Sorry, my button wasn't working there. So to the assessor,
Okay, sorry. Okay, I thought maybe my mic was out. So, okay.
just reaffirm that the heritage status is taken into account in
Okay.
the valuation.
I mean, we don't have I don't believe there is like a check mark for giving it a heritage classification and that actually adjusting anything. It's just taken into account through for example, the rental rates. We're using OFC rental rates to determine our model generated OFC rates, and there are a lot of heritage OFCs, but it's not. Again, we're not taking heritage rents and splitting those up and making it so this is, and then same with the cap rate. From my understanding, it's more just age, size, location. It does turn out that a lot of OFCs that sell, a lot of the ones downtown, anything in the exchange, majority of the time is heritage. So in a way, it is taken into account, but not specifically, if that's your question.
Yep, that was my question. Thank you. No further
Does that
questions.
give any questions?
I do not.
Okay, so I know Mr. Navarro already asked this question, Mr. Spacek, but it is one large unit. So if it was rented as one large unit, would that not affect the overall rent in the building over and above when it's partitioned?
Yeah, well, I think it would all depend what it was rented out for as 33,500 square feet. It would depend what that rent garnered. If it was just rented all out at $10, then yeah, it's different. But if it was rented out at $13.31, which works out to our blended rate, then we have nothing to talk about. So it's hard to say with certainty. Again, the theory of economies of scale is the 33,500. With our model, would probably pop out a lower rent if it was all in at 33,500 than if it was split up this way. We have some higher rents and some lower rents. So, I sadly don't have a certain answer for you, but I think there's the theory, and then there's what would this actually rent out for as one unit, versus this owner occupier using it all as one space and we having it split up based on uses to get what we believe is more accurate rent for those spots.
Okay, and thank you for that answer. I think that I understand that you're not able to provide a better answer because you're guessing like everybody else when it comes to things, and that's why we use the model. The thing I find interesting, do you know if the sale history, the sale took place on October 20th, 2021 at $3 million, do you know if that was arm's length or not?
I believe so, and I believe again, let me just go to my page here so I can confirm, because I'm definitely not thinking of the old sale, but I know I believe this sale happened right near the end of the lease for the prior, like that provincial lease for the land titles. I believe it was bought when that was running out, and I believe so it was kind of being bought as a quote unquote vacant building, maybe with a little bit of time left on that lease, and then, but I believe it was arm's length from my understanding.
Okay, thank you. And you provided a building permit, which certainly indicated that it was expected that $800,000 worth of renovations would be incurred.
Yeah.
And if those renovations in fact were implemented?
Yes, I believe they were implemented. I believe it is a full-on hair school now, and that's why that classification, it was 60T before, fully taxable, and then once the renovations were completed and the Avita school has been in there, it's been I think it's taken some appeals, but it's been changed to 40S, and we're keeping that going forward as its current use.
Okay, and if we were to take the 3 million plus 800,000, that would really be that cost to the present occupant or owner of the property at $3,800,000.
I do believe there is a appreciation in value since the renovations. For sure, how much it is probably a good question, but yeah, if you just added up the declared construction value, the owner has, on paper 3.8 at least spent.
Okay, yeah. Okay, well, you know what? I think that you answered Mr. Navarro's questions, which I think was helpful as well. So thank you very much. And we'll hear from Mr. Navarro now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I'll ask you to accept the capitalization rate study that we used for the original property for this property as well. And also, since I've already covered the section on the heritage in the previous example, this is exactly the same study, so I don't think we need to get into that side of it again. We'll just lightly touch upon it. However, I will ask you, prior to me commencing, my brief, is that you also have an opportunity to turn to page 13 of the cap rate study. We'll have that at hand, because I will need that as part of the explanation for the capitalization rate that I've used. Okay, so I'll begin if everyone is ready to go. This is 276 Portage Avenue, and the file number is 244413. And again, on page 2 or page 1, sorry, you can find the assessment summary. I'll ask you to turn to page 5, and we have some outside and overhead pictures of this property. And it is on the corner of Smith and Portage Avenue. And this would be, I believe, the southeast corner. On page 7, you can see the heritage property designation. Again, this property was designated in 1999. And it is a grade 2 asset. So again, the exterior and some elements could be included in the interior as well. I'm not sure if there are any interior elements included, but I know the entirety of the exterior the exterior is actually protected. Again, on page 8, we've already covered this in the previous property, the funding available for property owners of these types of properties. In terms of the approach that we've used, you can go to page 12. And what I will note about some of the leases that we've used. So these are mainly, well, these are heritage properties that we've used. And the reason we use them is that we tried to get larger sizes. Of course, it's not a perfect world. I wish we could find, 5 or 6 comparables of 30,000 square feet that would, perfectly fit into what we're looking at, but they don't. But we have found at least a couple that are in our opinion, very good comparisons. You can see that index 1 is Main Street. This is on the corner of Main Street and Graham. Actually, there's a picture of it on page 23 of the report. And this is also a school. So a downtown school, multi-floor, similar situation. 24,000 square feet and change. And we have a rental rate of $11 per square foot. Comparison or index number 5, again, is another school in the downtown. You can find that on page 27. That is Robertson Career College. That one is 39,874 square feet, and that is $12 per square foot. Amongst the other ones, you can see the comparisons from page, I believe, 23 to page 27 to look at them. What we have is an average rent of $12.71 and a median of $12.03. Now, the rent that we've selected is an adjustment on those. So we've selected a rent of $12.50 per square foot. That gives us a market rent of $418,775. In terms of the vacancy, we regard this as a Class D. We are using a 14% vacancy. I believe the assessor is using a similar vacancy. In terms of shortfall, we're not deviating $10 per square foot. And again, non-recovered expenses of 3%. In terms of the capitalization rate, obviously we're adjusting the capitalization rate. And there are several factors that we've used to justify that position. Again, we talked about the heritage status of the property. This one in particular had some issues with capital repairs, so CapEx. And this is capital costs that were, in the short term and the long term, and they're noted in the chart on page 15. Some of these repairs have been made, some of them haven't. In terms of the capitalization rate that we've adjusted, You can see on page 16 that we've adjusted the capitalization rate to 8%. Now, for heritage properties, as we noted, in the cap rate report, our capitalization rate for all this for downtown D, those are mainly heritage properties, ranges between 850 and 950. And for downtown C, it ranges between 775 and 825. Now, I'll just point out one thing and make a statement that we've never really agreed with the designation of this property as a downtown C property. Obviously, the city can do what it wants in terms of designating it as to what they want it to be. But our opinion is that this is always a heritage property. It will always continue to be a heritage property. So we classify it in that D category. However, in terms of the capitalization rate, we've gone to the low end. 8% is an appropriate cap rate from our perspective. Now, I asked you originally to turn to page 13 on the capitalization rate studies. And you can see that our B class properties that have sold, we're looking at pages 13, 14, and 15. So 155 Carlton is a B class building with a cap rate of 7.48. 185 Carlton is again a B class building with a cap rate of 8.7. And 433 Main Street is also a B class with a cap rate of 8.18. Now this is a C class, inferior to the B class. So I think those sales are probably indicating where the office market has gone. So we think that the 8% is appropriate, supported. And, you know, if you want to look at it from a very crude perspective, the chair actually asked this question. The property sold for $3 million. They added 800,000. You have $3.8 million. That is almost exactly where we landed. And we didn't look at those figures and try and come up with a number that matched each other. They just happened to match. We think that that is a more appropriate value at 3.873 rather than the 4.7 that the assessment is suggesting. In the appendix, you can see the pictures of the first and second floors, the third floor, the fourth floor. The sale brochure is included, or the pictures of the comparables are again from page 23 to 27. Page 28 is the sale brochure, 276 Portage. Originally, the offering was 3.750 million, and it sold for below that. Taking into account that there was a lease in place, the property value went below that. So the cap rate, if you really calculate it based on what the brochure says, it would have been far beyond 8.1%. There is an engineering report from Crozier Kilgore regarding the repair requirements of this property. You can look at that if you desire, but again, we think that the cap rate that we've selected for this property is supported. So we ask that you change the value. And I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miro. Any questions, Mr. Spacek?
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Stevenson, do you have any questions?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
And you know what, Mr. Navarro, thank you for your very thorough presentation. And I don't have any questions either because I've got nothing to really question you about it. So thank you very much for your presentation and your material. And both you and Mr. Spacek, thank you for your cooperation and having settled so many of these items and making our job so much easier and making the afternoon much more pleasant than it might have been otherwise.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we've now heard all items on the agenda today, so we're going to bring this session to termination. Thank you very much.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you both.